Hello everyone, welcome back to another playthrough series by the Board Game Buddy. Today we're going to be playing through the game Dungeon Alliance, designed by Andrew Parks. It's a game that has a lot of thematic similarities to Mage Knight. In terms of the mechanics and the way the game plays, it's also very similar to Mage Knight. Unlike Mage Knight, where we're controlling a single hero, in this case we are controlling an alliance of four. You can see the four heroes I've chosen here. Each of them have a kind of unique backstory, giving you some insight into their motivations. And then each of these heroes also has a unique deck of 3 cards that is specific to them. You shuffle these 12 cards in total to draw your initial hand. You can see the initial hand that I've drawn here. 2 cards for my character Crom, 2 cards for my character Petra, no cards as of yet for Growl-tar, and 2 cards for Hypsi. Our purpose is going to be within 4 rounds to explore the dungeon. There are tiles that we draw from the very beginning that will always appear here to the right in our tile drafting area. There is a stack of tiles that you see in the upper left corner that we'll draw from to replenish the tile drafting area. And then of course on the tiles themselves you can see the different kinds of monsters that we'll face and sometimes unique challenges that will occur. And we'll talk about those in more detail. Here's the layout of all of the monsters that are included with the base game. You can see, looking at the top, they range in difficulty of level 1, which you see denoted in the lower right hand corner, through level 2, going all the way to level 3. The tiles are kind of similar in the sense that there are level 1, 2, and 3 tiles, and the kinds of enemies that you encounter generally correspond with those enemy rankings. There is a unique, very helpful draft bonus chart that comes with the game, and you can use that to keep track of how many cards that you've drafted to power up, and based upon that, that will affect the number of cards you can discard or your hand size. The cards that we can draw to power up are really similar to the advanced action cards in Mage Knight, or similar to the way that spells and artifacts work. And those decks you'll see here. So this is the level 1 deck, level 2, and level 3. How do we gain access to these cards? Well, at the start of the game, we have our offer of 5 cards, which we've drawn from the level 1 deck. As we defeat monsters throughout the game, for example, there is the satyr whom we may encounter. He will have XP of 2, and that number of XP is denoted in the center bottom of the token, or you could look at that card itself to determine this. As we gain those XP, we'll take them from this initial pile. So there's an initial pile of 8, and then a second pile of 12, which is the requirement for the solo game. And as I take these away, let's say within round 1, I'm very fortunate and I'm able to remove all 8 of these. That means that starting in round 2, I begin replenishing the offer with the level 2 cards. Of course, then when I would acquire all of these secondary grouping of 12, I could then begin taking the level 3 cards. So it's really to our advantage to play somewhat aggressively so that we are able to earn XP, which we can then spend to acquire these powered up cards. Okay, so who can use which cards? Well, that's something that I think will become more obvious as we play through the game, but if we take a look at the initial cards in the offer, we'll see some different kinds of iconography. This is a game that really has a lot of iconography. And here we can see 2 different races pictured. So there are orcs and humans. That means that if you have a character who falls within one of those races, obviously not 2, that he or she can use this card. So in my case, I see that this is a card that would be available for Crom, and only Crom. None of my other characters are either of the human race, or actually Growl-tar is also an orc, so he could also use that card. In addition to the kinds of like race icons, you will also see some other kinds of symbols, which are kinds of like class icons. So this symbol, for example, is typically associated with characters who would be like elves. It's a sort of like a leaf symbol. And you can see that none of my characters possess that. So therefore, this Sylvan Bow is a card that is useless to me. It's not going to be of any benefit. In order for a character to draft a card, the character must possess all of the symbols that appear here. So let's say, for example, if Petra had one of those symbols, she could then draft it. And then there is another symbol that we'll see, which is usually associated with sort of somewhat like random or generic treasures. And this symbol denotes that the card may be used by any character. So that's always something that's helpful to have, although generally those sorts of generic treasures may not be as helpful as some of the more race or class specific cards that you find. But of course, we'll see how that plays out. So I think we are going to go ahead and jump in. I think that's essentially an overview. The one other item I may have mentioned is when you play solo, there's a very helpful solo AI deck. And the AI deck will always tell you what's going to happen at the end of a hero's activation. So it's not something you do at the end of a round, but you do it at the end of every hero's activation or turn. So with 4 heroes, then there are 4 turns within a round, and at the very end of each of those, you are drawing this AI and following its instructions. So we will talk about how that plays out as we go through. If we look more closely at the character's cards, we can see the character's base attack. So if a character has a bow, that means it's a ranged attack. So you can attack monsters that are within 2 to 3 spaces of you. If they have a sword, that's a melee attack, meaning they must attack monsters that are adjacent. Typically, on a kind of standard turn, a character could spend speed points, which you see denoted here, and then after spending speed points can attack. If you choose not to attack, then you can take advantage of your speed points twice for 2 movement, or if you do not move, you could attack twice. Those, we'll see how that plays out. That may or may not be something that happens throughout the course of our playthrough. One other item that we see here, we can see the character's evade or armor. So this symbol indicates that the character has the ability to evade 2. Other times you may see a symbol like this, which is armor, and that's treated similarly to evade, although you can combine them together if the cards allow. But that's the character's sort of base defense. And you'll also see that the monsters we encounter have some base evade or armor as well. So that's something that we'll need to take into account whenever making attacks against them. One final item before we get started is that I am incorporating 3 unique quests into the game. The quests are really interesting in the sense that they require specific actions to trigger, and then there are specific conditions that must be fulfilled in order to resolve them. So you can see the 2 quests on the right, Lady Eleanor and Mentor, are the easier quests. And the quest on the left, Castrum, represents a kind of final boss. I'm using, to represent him, I'm using this sort of cheap miniature I was able to pick up from the Reaper Bones series. And I do think it's pretty cool how similar he looks to the character's art. He even has this sort of mace-like weapon or scepter, which I think is really cool. So for the purposes of this playthrough, I'm not going to prioritize these 2 quests, but I am going to prioritize defeating Castrum and revealing all of the tiles. That's sort of my personal goal. If I'm able to achieve more than that, I'll obviously be very happy, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so for my first turn, what I think I want to do is I think I want to activate this character, Hypsi. So I'm going to take her token and just flip it over to denote that she's been activated or exhausted, you might say. She's been in use, and I'm placing it here toward the center of her card. And then what I think I would like to do is, this is her corresponding figure on the board. I think I would like to open this door so that I could look at a tile over here. And if I look at the cards I have in my hand, right now there really are only 2 cards that I could play for her character. And they would be this control spell, Drain Vigor, or this attack spell, which gives a ranged attack of 4 and also allows us to ignore the target's evade defense. The control spell here is it's tempting, but when I take a look at the tiles, I don't know if that's something that is really going to be to my advantage at the moment, because I don't think I'm going to open this tile. Instead, I think I'm going to explore this tile. And something that I think adds interesting sort of strategic depth to the game is that whenever you reveal a tile, you have the option to choose how you orient the tile. So I could orient it in this way, or I could turn it any other way as well. And I think as the game plays out, we'll see some of the advantages or disadvantages to orienting tiles one way or the other. But for the purposes of this turn, I'm going to orient the tile like so. And I'm going to place it here. And the reason why I did that is because this is connecting a door to a door. So that means that Hypsi, my hero, only has to spend 1 speed point from her total of 4 to go ahead and attempt to open the door. She will place an archway token over the door to denote that it has been opened. And then she is going to spend 1 more speed point so that she could move up. And she is now within range of 2 towards the monster, who in this case is the Death Fairy. Now, whenever the door opens, the rules state that you do turn the token toward the door, with the thinking being that the enemies have heard you come in, they've noticed this door opening, and they're turning to see what awaits them, who's coming. Because her base ranged attack is pretty weak, it's only 1, that doesn't do us very much good, but I can play this base attack of 4. So this 4 replaces the base range attack of 1. And it also allows me to ignore the target's evade defense. We'll check the monster's card just to make sure there aren't any special defense abilities associated with it. But if there are not, that attack of 4 is enough to be more than its overall health of 3, which would mean we would be successful in defeating this enemy, and we would also be able to gain then its 3 XP. But first, let's check the card. Okay, so it looks like this monster does not have any special defensive ability, but it does have a special kind of attack ability. So that's really good that we're going to be able to take it out now with our special magic bolt. So that's a pretty satisfying feeling. We'll take the token. And again, if we look in the center bottom, we could see 3 XP. So we're going again to take this 3 XP from the initial pile of 8. And I'm going to place these XP over here in my player area, indicating that they are now available for use. And we can primarily use these in 2 ways. One way is that we could spend XP to purchase a card from the offer. But whenever you're playing with the quests, which you see at the very top, you're able to spend XP to satisfy one of the required triggers. So for example, if we look at Castrom's card, it says to trigger this, you must defeat 3 zombies and or death fairies to place the entrance to the ancient crypt within the dungeon. So if, let's say, through the luck of my draw, I was not very successful in drawing those monsters to defeat, and I wanted to trigger him, I would pay an XP equivalent to the current round in order to satisfy one of those triggers. So 1 XP in round 1, 2 in round 2, etc., etc. But I think that won't be necessary. We did defeat a death fairy, so I'm going to place 1 XP there upon, 1 moon token upon his card and below the token to reveal that I've satisfied one of the 3 triggers. And then I do have the 3 XP that I can spend. So I'll take a look at the cards and see which ones maybe appeal to me. So I know that Adaptable is a card that can be used by these orcs, and I know that both Crom and Growl-tar are of that race, so that's appealing because it gives me some flexibility. It can be used by 2 characters. This is a card that could be used by Hypsi because the race aligns, but her Magic Bolt is already a pretty powerful ranged attack, although this does provide some flexibility in allowing you to target enemies who are a little bit further away, but she would be the only character who could use it. The gold key could be used by anyone. Spend 1 movement or 1 speed to automatically open an adjacent locked door, and we'll talk about what locked doors and locked chests are. Don't think I want that at the moment. Sylvan Bow cannot be used by anyone. And the Sense Secret Door could actually be used by both Petra and Hypsi, again because of the race. Let's take a closer look at it. Spend 1 speed to attempt to open an adjacent secret door despite the presence of enemies. That could be really helpful later in the game whenever more tiles are revealed. But for the moment, I think I would like to take either Farsighted or Adaptable. I think I'm going to take Adaptable. And so for whenever you draft a card, you look at the total XP it costs, so in this case 1. Turn that face down to indicate it's been spent. It remains in your player area and will count toward your overall points at the end of the game. You take the card, and unlike Mage Knight, of course, where you would place it at the top of your deed deck, you actually place it directly into hand. So in this case, I'm going to place it over here, closer to the character who is more likely to use it, who would probably be Crom. So I'm just going to place that there. I will make a note that whenever you play a card on a hero's turn, you do place it underneath their hero's card, and you leave it there for the rest of the round, only discarding it at the end of the round. So I just want to take a moment to clean this up. You can see our hand size is 6. And if we go back up to our chart, we'll indicate that we've drafted 1 card from the offer, meaning that our discard limit is now 2 and our hand size remains 6. And we will take a level 1 card to replace the card we just drafted. Critical Strike has 2 of these shield symbols. Since Crom is a character who has 1 shield symbol, you may think that you could use it, but that's actually not the case. He is required, and any hero would be required to have all of the symbols that appear on the card. So yeah, that's unfortunate. That is something that will not be available to us. One thing we should do before moving on to the enemy's AI is to go ahead and replace this tile. Okay, so that's the tile that is replacing the one that we've already placed. And at this point, we've done everything for our hero's activation. We have spent speed points, we have made a successful attack, we have used the XP from that attack to draft a card, which we placed into our hand. We could have the possibility of discarding. I don't know. I suppose I could discard this card of Hypsi's and then draw back up. And I think I probably will do so. So I'm just going to take this, set it sideways over here to indicate it's been discarded. Draw up my new card, which is a pet of Petra's. I am going to place that here close to her player card. So this will give her some significant attack ability, and we'll talk about how this card functions when we actually play it. So I am happy I discarded there. I am going to go ahead then and take a look at the AI. So at the top, what that's telling us is we should take this card from the tile drafting area and discard it. I will replace it with a new one now. And then it's saying that the highest XP monster will attack a hero of that race or class. Since there are no monsters on the board, because the only one who appeared was defeated, we unfortunately then have to go down to the very bottom, to the otherwise, and suffer the consequences there. Sometimes these consequences are really severe, like they will limit your hand size, or they will have other really negative effects, but in this case it's telling us we acquire 1 negative XP. So I'm just going to take that and place it in our player area. So at the end of the game, this is sort of like a negative mark against us. So I will turn this sideways to indicate it has been satisfied, and then we immediately draw up the next one so that we know what's awaiting us next round. There is a variant, an official variant you could play where you don't reveal these until it's actually the end of the hero's turn, so you don't really know what's coming and you don't have as much time to plan. And that certainly is a way to up the challenge, and it could be interesting, especially if you were to get into this game and play it often. It's nice to have that way to be able to increase the challenge. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the next hero's turn. Okay, so the next character I'm going to activate is going to be Petra. And she has some great cards specific to her, including this enhanced spell, which says that for the rest of the round, you and all allies who defend while they are adjacent to you gain a 2 armor bonus. So I'm going to go ahead and cast that now. And kind of as a reminder to myself, I'm going to grab these 2 tokens that we usually use to denote enemy wounds. I'm going to place them here to remind myself that in fact this is a bonus that I have, and that anyone adjacent to me has the same. And that's good because her base defense is a pretty lowly 1 evade. And then she is also going to cast Deep Knowledge, which says you may immediately peek at the top 3 cards of the current upgrade deck and draft one of those cards of your choice. It doesn't count as a card drafted for this turn, and then I can replace the remaining 2 back in any order that I like. And again, if I draft this now, I can take this directly into hand, so that's great. So let's take a look. So we have Ice, and unfortunately, well, we do actually have one character who could use that in Hypsi. That's tempting. We have Protection, which could be played by either Petra or Growl-tar. And we have the Ring of Command, which interests me a lot less. I think I am going to go ahead and spend 2 XP to draft Ice. Even though I can't use it right now, it is a card I want to have, so I'll place it in hand. And I will place these back with protection being top, because that is a card that still interests me. And so then I haven't spent any of Petra's movement points, and I think I want to spend them to move over here, opening up this tile. So I'm going to open it up with this orientation, turning all of the monsters because they hear the door opening. So she will spend 1 movement point to move over, a second to open the door, and then she's going to spend her third to move adjacent to both of these enemies. At this point then, she is going to play her pet for an attack of 5. And she is going to take that 5. Now this symbol indicates that we cannot add any attack on top of it. It cannot stack. And apply that to the Varg's defense of 1. It's evade. But it does have a unique instruction that says its instincts dictate that you roll the combat die. So let's see what we roll. And it's a 3. So 3 plus 1 is 4. Compare that to the attack of 5. So at least we do 1 wound to the Varg. And now she still has an attack of her own that she's able to make. And so taking a look at the cards that are available to her, none of these particularly help. We could play 2 of these cards sideways for a burst of strength, giving her 1 additional attack. But I don't think that is worth it in this case. Instead, I think what she is going to do is just make her base attack of 2. And then we'll roll the die 1 more time. And it's a 3, so no damage goes through. We do have the option now to purchase more from the offer, but we've spent all of our XP. So what we are going to do then is just to draw up to our new hand limit of 6. Bump this up to indicate that we did draw 1 more card. Okay. Now I do, prior to doing that, I would have had the option to discard. So I think what I would have done is I would have discarded Ice, since we can't activate Hypsi until the next round. So I'm going to draw 1 more up. Okay, we'll take a look at the enemy AI. There were no exhausted enemies, so the highest XP would be this Varg, and it's activating against the hero with the lowest defense, including any bonuses. So if we add the armor bonus to Petra, she has 3. Anyone adjacent to her, like Growl-tar, would have 2 more, so he would have 4, meaning that the lowest defender would be Crom or Hypsi, and I think with its movement of 6, it may be able to get to either. So let's see. So it would move 1, 2, because it's moving from adjacent to adjacent, 3, 4, adjacent to adjacent, and then 5, 6, again, adjacent to adjacent. So it could attack either. Because Hypsi has the lower health, I will have it attack her. So its attack is 4 against her evade of 2. It does not have any attack bonus there, so it is simply going to inflict 2 wounds. We will exhaust this and draw the next card. Okay. When we come back, we will activate either Crom or Growl-tar. Okay, just a bit of housekeeping before we get into the next hero's turn. I do have to replace this tile in the tile draft area. All right, so let's go ahead and add these monster tokens, and then consider who we should activate next. I think what I will do is to go ahead and activate Growl-tar. And I am going to use this 4 movement to move like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each movement costing 2 because I'm moving from adjacent to adjacent. And then I'm going to play some of his attack cards to try to defeat this Varg. So he is going to gain +2 melee by playing Power Kick. He is going to play his Nunchucka to gain more melee. So that takes him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that should be enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against the Varg's defense of 1. Let's roll the dice. Let's see. It has 1 for a total of 2. So it takes enough damage so that it is finally defeated. And I will remove its wound token. And it provides us with 2 XP. Okay, let's see if we may want to draft anything here. I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and, since I have 2 XP to spend, I can actually discard this and draw another card. Now, if the card I replace here is one I want to draft, I can, but I cannot draft any of the others. So let's see. So I draft Protection, which is worth, which costs only 1 XP. I do think I want this card, so I'm going to pay and then take it into hand. I can indicate now, updating this. That means that my discard is 3, so I actually am going to discard these 2. My hand limit is now 7, so I'm going to draw back up. 3, 4, 5. I would have to shuffle these and then draw them back up into my hand to get to 7. So I will do that quickly. Okay, so 6 and 7. Monster AI says to refresh, but there's nothing to refresh. So the one of these goblins will make an attack against the lowest value armor or evade hero. So it will not be Petra because of her bonus. There's no one adjacent to her to receive the bonus. So of these 3, the lowest is Hypsi. And the goblin has a movement of 5. So it can go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this brings it into range. It has an attack of 2. It doesn't have any bonus. And Hypsi has a defense of 2. So she is successful in avoiding it, except the goblin does have the wild shot ability, so I will roll this dice to see. Comes up with 1, which means she will take 1 wound. So she has a total of 3 wounds at this point and only 5 health, so that is just not great. Okay, so we will exhaust this and then draw up our next AI card, which will go into effect during the next hero activation, which is going to be Crom. Before I activate Crom, I'm just going to replace the card I had drafted previously, which was Protection. And I drafted Treasure, which is Ring of Command. Looks pretty good. Okay, so Crom is activated. And what I am going to do first is I am going to take this action of his, the Howl of Triumph, which allows him to add 1 XP and to remove 1 wound from himself. 1 XP should he be successful in an attack. And I'm going to do that because I would like to have him move over here to this tile. And I'm going to take the chance to walk into the room and just reveal this challenge token. Since there are no enemies here, and if there would be no enemies here, I could move adjacent to the door and make an attempt to reveal the challenge token, but because there is still this enemy here, I cannot do that. So Crom is just going to take a chance and kind of rush into the room with the hopes that he can move up here, find a secret door, and use that secret door to reveal this tile. And it would be a secret door because I want to orient it in this direction, so he would be coming in here where the satyr is located, so he could be adjacent to him and then use combat, taking advantage of hide. And I'll show you how I would play hide in order to have him do that in just a moment. But first, I guess let's see what this challenge token might be. So he's going to move 1, 2, and here he has to stop, and we have to reveal the challenge token. So we'll see. Hopefully it's like a locked chest or something, like not a trap. Okay, and it is a dart trap. So this goes, this is a trap that you would, temporarily place under your hero and then remove. It's only the pit trap that stays. But let's take a look at what the dart trap actually does. Okay, when this trap is sprung, the hero is attacked by a 3 ranged attack, which is increased by +1 combat die. The dart trap inflicts poison wound tokens. Okay, so that's not great. So I'm going to take the die, roll it, hope for a 0 or a 1. It's a 0, so that's good. Crom has an evade of 2, so he does take 1 wound, and it because they're darts, they're poison, right? So he's going to take 1 wound token. But that's okay. Now this challenge has been activated. I'll just set it over here at the bottom of the pile to indicate it's done. Remember, it's only a pit trap that would stay. And then I'm going to have Crom. So his total movement so far has been 1, 2. He's going to move here 3, so he's out of sight of any monsters. So he can play Hide. And Hide says that you can play this when you're out of sight of any monsters, and then the card remains beside you even after the round ends. While the card is beside you, you cannot be attacked. After you attack or move more than 2 spaces, you must immediately discard this card. So I'm really playing it for the effect that it has on his Assassinate card. It gives you +3 melee attack when attacking an enemy's back or when Hide is placed beside you. So the +3 here would be added to the +3 base melee attack, giving him a total of 6. And if he is able to successfully open this tile, this secret door, that would be enough to take out the satyr. So I'm just going to take a moment to flip all of these the other way. All right, so again, his total movement was 1, 2, 3. I guess I probably should have moved over here. So let's say it was 1, 2, and then that activated the challenge, and which we resolved, and it took him out of line of sight, which allowed us to play Hide. And now I've played this battle tactic, increasing our melee. Now he so far has spent 1, 2 movement points. He's going to spend a third to attempt to open this tile, and then he will spend a fourth to guarantee his success. And he's able to make this attempt because there are no monsters in his room. So even if I had moved 1, 2, 3, I could still spend 4 and 5. So that would have been fine. I'll just move this here because that's the way I originally moved. So I did move 1, 2, 3, 4 for the attempt, and 5 for the success. Now, if you don't have movement points to spend and you still want to see if you're able to open a tile for a secret door, you would spend your 1 movement point for the attempt, and then you would roll the combat die. And as long as the result is equal to or greater than the level of the tile, you would be successful. Okay, so let's get into some combat. So we know that Crom has an attack of 6, 3 for his base, 3 for the bonus. That allows him to successfully defeat the satyr. Its evade of 3 still allows 3 wounds to go through. And the satyr does not have any special defensive abilities. And we should remember that because we previously played Howl of Triumph, that we add 1 additional XP and we can remove 1 wound. So that is really great. The dart trap was not that consequential. And this is really good because it allows us to take the final 3 XP from the initial grouping, which means that when we begin replacing the offer next round, we'll replace it from the level 2 cards, which is going to be very beneficial. Okay, so we now have 4 XP to spend, and we could take a look to see if there's anything that we would like. I think I am most tempted by Sense Secret Door, so we could see here. Spend 1 to attempt to open an adjacent secret door despite the presence of enemies. and add 2 to your attempt to open the door. If you succeed, you even gain 2 XP. So that might come into, that might be very useful later. The other 2 I might think about would be Farsighted, because that's a card that could help Hypsi, or Ring of Command. So Ring of Command says you could spend 1 movement to target 1 ready monster that is 2 to 3 spaces away from you. Roll 1 combat die and add 1 to the result. If the total is equal to or greater than the monster's level, the monster is exhausted. Well, I'm not that interested in exhausting monsters, although that may come back to haunt me. I think instead what I would probably like to do is to pick up Farsighted to give Hypsi some more combat options. So I'm going to go ahead and take that now. Place that into my hand. I will indicate that this is the 4th card I've drafted. I will replace it. And again, I'm replacing it with level 1 cards because the level 2 cards I'm not able to use until I get to the end of this round. And then I will, just for some kind of bookkeeping, I'll go back and replace this tile I've just taken. And it's a tile with some vargs on it. I do need to spend my 1 XP. I'll do that now. And I'm actually going to spend 1 more XP to trigger one of Castrom's requirements. And so the rules state that if you cannot fulfill the condition of a quest, so for example, if I can't kill 3 zombies or death fairies, I can spend XP equivalent to the round that I'm currently in to satisfy one of those triggers. So since this is round 1, I've spent 1 XP to add 1 more trigger. In some ways, I would like to be able to place him a little bit sooner and bring him out sooner. So that's why I did that. Okay, so let's check hand size. We currently are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Draw back up. 6, 7. So I'm just going to take a second to organize this a little bit. So we have a lot of cards in hand now that can be used by Hypsi. So I'm going to save that. Obviously going to start with her probably for the beginning of the next round. I will have 2 XP to take over with me. And we're going to go ahead to the AI. We are moving this. I think this is the first time we've seen this, but this down arrow symbol means that we are placing this in a kind of temporary discard pile. And that means it's still available for drafting later, but at the additional expense of 1 XP. Replace it with Boots of Speed, which I really like, giving us a lot of movement. We'll permanently remove the 4th card, revealing the scroll of minor teleportation, which is also good for movement. So the rules now state that the highest XP monster will do a bonus attack of 1 against a hero who meets one of these criteria. In this case, it would be Crom. And the highest XP we would say would be the spider. It does do melee attack, so it's going to exhaust and move into range. It has an attack of 3, and we see that if it's successful, it inflicts poison wound tokens, kind of like those poison darts. So 3 against his defense of 2 means that he does take 1 poison wound, and when we do the end phase, I'll show you what that means. Essentially, he's going to gain 1 more wound. It's this kind of slow acting poison. Regardless of how many poison wounds you ever have, at the end of the round, you only ever gain 1. Again, because that poison is slow acting. I guess the game is brutal enough in other ways that they don't need to make poison even more tough. So we will exhaust this and take a look at the enemy AI for the beginning of the next round. Okay, I think that was a pretty successful round one. We were able, I think, most importantly, to reveal all of these 8 XP, take all of them, meaning we can start drawing more powerful cards in the second round. I think we should really try to explore and get a move on, try to reveal many more tiles for round 2, but we will see how it goes.